3 legendary motorcycle brands just hit a wall. One's crumbling under its own weight, one got crushed by politics, and one, it's begging for survival in court. This isn't just about motorcycles, it's about what happens when legacy gets outpaced by reality. Buckle up, the crash is already happening. The used market that's killing new sales. Harley's greatest competitor is not Honda. It is not Indian Motorcycle. It is not even economic recession. Harley's greatest threat is Harley, or more specifically, the Harley Davidsons that were sold 5 or 10 years ago and are now flooding the used market in near-perfect condition. Thousands of baby boomers, the generation that once fueled Harley's rise, are aging out of motorcycling. Some are retiring from riding altogether. Others are downsizing or simply deciding to sell off the extra bikes sitting in their garages. And these are not just any motorcycles. These are low-mileage, meticulously maintained, chrome-polished Harleys that ride almost exactly like their newer counterparts. Thanks to Harley's commitment to a timeless design and dependable engine architecture, a 5-year-old model is functionally identical to one fresh off the showroom floor. And that is the problem. When you can buy a pre-owned Road Glide with premium upgrades, saddlebags, and custom pipes for $15,000 United States dollars, or sometimes even less, why would anyone spend $35,000 United States dollars for the same experience minus the personal touches? The truth is, Harley's own engineering durability and aesthetic consistency have backfired. In a world where motorcycles are less about flash and more about value, the used market has become a graveyard for new sales. Walk into a dealership today and you will see bikes with price tags that make even die-hard Harley fans hesitate. Then they open their phones, check an online listing, and find an older model that looks, sounds, and rides just the same for half the cost. Dealerships are sitting on new inventory while the used market booms. Harley's timelessness, once its selling point, is now its obstacle. Every year, another wave of affordable used Harleys enters circulation, making the case for buying new even harder to justify. And it is not just about cost. It is about the fact that new Harleys offer little that the old ones do not. This is the tragic irony. Harley built bikes to last, and they did. So well, in fact, that riders no longer need to come back. In chasing longevity, Harley accidentally created its own competition, and in doing so, cannibalized its own future. But even if it found a way to make new bikes irresistible, that would not solve the next crisis. Because Harley's problems are not just mechanical or financial, they are cultural. A culture that no longer connects. Once wearing a Harley Davidson patch meant you were part of something. Brotherhood, tradition, defiance. It was a look, a lifestyle, and a tribe. Riders clad in leather vests, arms inked with loyalty, roaring together down open roads. That image was magnetic for generations. Now, for many younger riders, it is a reason to stay away. Today's motorcycle buyers are not looking for a lifestyle to conform to. They are looking for bikes that fit their lifestyles. Versatile, tech-friendly, affordable, and inclusive. The old guard might see clubs, patches, and Harley-only events as sacred traditions. Younger riders see them as rigid barriers to entry. They are not trying to be outlaws. They are trying to ride. Events like the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, mixed-brand ADV meetups, and women-led moto collectives are exploding in popularity. These new riding communities are about connection, passion, and freedom, but not brand loyalty. They embrace diversity. They welcome newcomers. They prioritize accessibility over exclusivity. And that is where Harley misread the road ahead. Rather than evolve with its next generation of customers, Harley doubled down on the past. Marketing campaigns still echo the rebel biker fantasy, the lone wolf image, the chrome cowboy. But that message no longer resonates. It feels like a museum exhibit. Fascinating, perhaps nostalgic, but not relevant. Harley's refusal to reframe its identity is costing it dearly, because motorcycles today are no longer about just image. They are about integration. Riders want GPS, ride modes, modular luggage systems, and comfort. They want brands that speak to their reality, not brands that expect them to play a part in a legacy script. The motorcycle world has changed. The roads are still open, but the riders have evolved. Harley's culture has not. And while its current base grows older, fewer and fewer new riders are willing to step into a world that does not welcome them on their own terms. Still, Harley has not entirely ignored the future. The company has flirted with innovation. The problem? It never jumped in. But before we get to Harley's attempt to pivot, quick pause. If this kind of deep dive speaks to you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're not already part of the ride. We break down the rise, the fall, and everything related to motorcycles. All right, back to the road ahead and the half-step Harley took that nearly turned into a nosedive. Innovation without commitment. Harley Davidson tried to modernize. The intentions were real. The execution was not. And what could have been a new era for the company became a string of missed opportunities. The Livewire was the boldest attempt. An all-electric motorcycle meant to signal Harley's leap into the future, but it launched with a price tag just under $30,000 United States dollars, completely out of reach for the eco-conscious millennials and urban commuters it was built for. Sales were so underwhelming that Harley spun Livewire off into its own brand, creating distance instead of momentum. Then came the Pan America, a powerful, feature-rich adventure bike that for once impressed critics and genuinely challenged the dominance of brands like BMW and KTM in the ADV space. It proved Harley could build modern bikes that perform beyond the boulevard, and yet the Pan America became an exception, not a foundation. The same goes for the Revolution Max engine. It is one of the best powertrains Harley has ever produced. Liquid-cooled, responsive, modern, but Harley barely implemented it beyond a few models. The company clung to its air-cooled Milwaukee 8 engines, hesitant to upset its legacy customers. This is Harley's deepest flaw. It experiments but never commits. It dips a toe in progress when it needs to cannonball. It introduces new ideas but never lets them define its future. And without that commitment, each innovation is doomed to become a footnote instead of a chapter. Harley did not fail because it was incapable of evolving. It failed because it was afraid to. And while it hesitated, Indian made a move that changed everything. Only this time, the move backfired. The comeback that caught fire. Indian Motorcycle did the unthinkable. It came back from the dead, and for a moment, it looked like a masterstroke. After disappearing from the road for nearly half a century, the brand roared back with the full backing of Perilous Industries, a company known more for snowmobiles and utility vehicles than American muscle. What followed was one of the boldest resurrection attempts in modern motorcycling history. This was not some nostalgic brand relaunch fueled by weak retro styling. Indian came back with muscle, precision, and purpose. The lineup was sharp, competitive, and unmistakably premium. The Scout Bobber took younger riders by surprise, sleek, stripped down, yet still packed with engineering strength. The Challenger, meanwhile, carved out space in the heavyweight touring segment with a balance of power, comfort, and technology that even Harley loyalists could not ignore. Indian wasn't asking riders to imagine the past. It was building something that looked forward while echoing its origin. More importantly, Indian offered riders what Harley no longer could: an American-made cruiser that felt both modern and personal. The pricing was better, the engineering more refined, and the dealership experience, still small, felt less like a trap and more like a conversation. One by one, frustrated Harley owners walked into Indian showrooms and found themselves stunned. Riders who had sworn allegiance to the bar and shield were suddenly leaving with something different tattooed across their tanks. What Perilous pulled off looked like an all-American comeback story, a ghost-turned-champion, a rebirth not only of a brand, but of a legacy. And for a while, it worked. Indian's image soared. Sales grew. Riders started imagining a world with two serious American motorcycle competitors, not just one. They thought it would unify the brand, but it fractured the base instead. The logo that started a war. In early February of 2023, Indian Motorcycle issued an internal memo to its dealerships across the United States. The message was clear. The full-color Native American headdress logo, long tied to Indian's visual identity, was being officially decommissioned. It would be replaced entirely by a simplified, monochrome version. No feathers, no vivid tones, just black and white minimalism. Indian framed the decision as one of brand consistency and cultural respect. Executives stated they wanted to modernize the visual identity while also being more sensitive to Native American communities. On paper, the move seemed cautious and forward-thinking. In reality, it exploded into one of the most divisive cultural backlashes in motorcycle history. Riders felt betrayed. This was not just a logo to them, it was a symbol of the brand's soul. The full-color headdress represented history, character, and identity. It was not viewed as offensive, it was revered. To remove it while keeping the name Indian intact felt like hypocrisy. The backlash came swiftly and with force. Riders flooded forums, filled dealerships, and lit up social media. They called it what it felt like: corporate cowardice masked as progress. Many accused Indian of selling out to political political correctness. They saw it as a calculated move to earn applause from people who never rode motorcycles while alienating those who kept the brand alive. Dealers were blindsided, forced to move merchandise branded with the now defunct logo. Indian introduced a clearance program, 25% discounts on all remaining gear, but that only amplified the sense of loss. Customers walked in confused. Some walked out angry. The brand's strongest symbol had become its most controversial, and trust, once lost, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Once that trust was broken, sales were not far behind. Two riders, one brand, and no middle ground. Indian found itself split down the middle. On one side were older riders, proud, loyal, and patriotic. These were motorcyclists who had cheered Indian's return as a second chance for American craftsmanship. They loved the full-color logo because it felt like a bridge to something real, something rooted in time. On the other side stood a younger, more progressive crowd. They valued modern aesthetics, clean branding, and inclusivity. To them, Indian's visual update wasn't a betrayal, it was an overdue correction. The problem? Indian tried to be both, and in doing so, it became neither. Legacy buyers felt abandoned. New buyers remained skeptical. When a brand tries to please everyone, it often pleases no one. The internal fracture became external. Some riders quietly left the brand. Others made loud exits. Clubs split. Forums devolved into cultural battlegrounds. And through it all, Indian was left with a question it could not answer. Who are we building motorcycles for? That question bled into everything. Marketing became safer. Product launches felt restrained. Even the bikes themselves began to reflect the tension. The aggressive spirit that once defined Indian's second act was now muddied by caution. Riders sensed it. Dealers sensed it. The energy was different. As Indian struggled to walk this tightrope, another brand across the ocean began to fall. Not because of symbolism, but because of something far more unforgiving: math. Just as Indian fought to redefine itself, another giant was collapsing completely. Stuck between legacy and modernity, Indian's greatest strength, its ability to blend old and new, had now become a trap. The very balance that once set it apart was breaking down under pressure. Riders wanted clarity, but the brand looked increasingly lost in the fog. The Scout Bobber, the FTR, the Challenger, they were all mechanically strong, but strong bikes alone cannot carry a company through cultural conflict, and Indian's recent moves were starting to look less like leadership and more like uncertainty. The logo reversal, the muted brand tone, the radio silence from Perilous when backlash surged. It all signaled hesitation. To longtime riders, that hesitation felt like betrayal. To new riders, it looked like indecision. And in a culture where brand loyalty is fragile, that's a dangerous combination. Heritage brands face a unique challenge. They are not just selling products, they are selling meaning. When that meaning fractures, so does everything else. Indian is no longer just competing on price, horsepower, or tech, it is competing on identity. And that's the hardest battleground of all. Some say Indian can still recover, that it can reframe its values and reconnect with both sides of its rider base. Others believe the split is permanent, that the logo wasn't just an emblem, but a warning sign, one that revealed a deeper instability hiding behind the paint and chrome. While Indian battled image, KTM was bleeding money fast. The shock no one saw coming. KTM once stood as the proud heart of European motorcycle engineering, an iconic brand revered for conquering racetracks, dominating rugged terrain, and setting performance standards around the globe. Known for precision, agility, and unyielding aggression, KTM motorcycles embodied speed, resilience, and unwavering reliability. Yet when news emerged that KTM had filed for self-administration, shock cascaded through the global motorcycle community, leaving riders, dealers, and analysts alike reeling in disbelief. The official statement from Peer Mobility Action Gesellschaft, KTM's parent company, painted the filing as a necessary strategic restructuring, carefully worded to suggest measured control. However, beneath that sterile corporate language was a harsh and unforgiving reality. Over the past 12 months, Pure Mobility's stock value had spiraled downward, plunging a devastating 84%. Investors, once buoyant and optimistic, watched helplessly as their holdings evaporated into thin air, confidence shattered irreparably. Cash reserves at KTM dwindled rapidly. As the company attempted to secure crucial new credit lines, they faced an unresponsive banking sector, wary of KTM's steep decline. Doors closed, phones remained silent, and the company's financial lifelines vanished overnight. The renowned motorcycle manufacturer admired globally for innovation and excellence, suddenly found itself teetering on the brink of insolvency. Production lines ground to an abrupt halt. The hum of factories and bustling warehouses across Europe fell eerily silent. KTM confirmed the devastating news. 300 dedicated employees faced layoffs, a painful roster that included engineers, product designers, logistics experts, and factory floor workers. Ambitious development projects, future model upgrades, and strategic expansions were immediately halted, thrust into uncertain limbo as the company shifted to a stark survival mode. The reaction from the riding community was immediate and intense. Forums exploded with anxious discussions and heated speculation. Dealers scrambled to address frantic customer inquiries about warranty claims, parts availability, and potential future deliveries. From Austria to Australia, KTM motorcycle owners grappled with uncertainty, their trust in the brand profoundly shaken. The self-administration was designed as a temporary lifeline, providing 90 precious days for KTM to stabilize, find financial support, or locate a willing buyer. Yet deep within the corridors of KTM, the realization was dawning. Recovery might be far from achievable. The root cause of KTM's downfall was traced back to one perilous miscalculation, a deeply ingrained assumption that customer demand would forever be strong, unwavering, and endlessly renewable. Overconfidence at scale. KTM has always engaged in a high-risk, high-reward strategy of aggressive global expansion. At its zenith, production peaked at more than 1,000 motorcycles per day, a staggering rate driven by optimism and an unwavering belief in limitless market appetite. This relentless push for scale saw KTM expanding vigorously into high-volume, low-margin markets across India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. The strategy aimed at overpowering competitors like Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki by capturing a dominant share of beginner bike segments in emerging economies. The logic was straightforward: attract young, first-time riders with affordable, entry-level bikes, establish deep-rooted brand loyalty, and leverage that customer base to upscale progressively into more profitable segments. However, KTM underestimated the volatility of the global economy. As markets struggled to regain stability post-pandemic, rampant inflation surged, interest rates skyrocketed, and disposable incomes dramatically shrank. Suddenly, KTM's key demographic, young, economically sensitive buyers, found themselves priced out of the new motorcycle market. Warehouses filled to capacity with unsold inventory, while dealerships scrambled to slash prices, desperate to move stagnant stock. Entry-level models that were supposed to create a stable foundation instead morphed into substantial financial burdens. Meanwhile, KTM's infrastructure buckled under the strain. Supply chains faltered, regional logistics networks unraveled, and fixed costs ballooned uncontrollably. Instead of reinforcing premium segments that played to their racing heritage, KTM stubbornly doubled down on a volume-driven approach in markets rapidly deteriorating. Debt obligations and operational expenses soared uncontrollably, compounding pressure as unsold motorcycles piled higher. KTM had built a grand empire without strengthening its foundational support, and when crisis struck, their financial resilience evaporated. The partners who walked away. Critical to KTM's previous success was its robust network of strategic partnerships, notably with India's Bajaj Auto. More than merely investors, Bajaj played an integral role as manufacturing co-creators and distribution allies, enabling KTM to capture the crucial Indian motorcycle market. However, in 2021, Bajaj abruptly sold its shares back to Perilous Mobility and quietly exited their partnership, an event now viewed as the catalyst for KTM's recent catastrophic unraveling. Without Bajaj's support, KTM faced skyrocketing manufacturing costs, bloated operational budgets, and deteriorating efficiency. Logistics became cumbersome, production expenses surged, and competitive advantages swiftly disappeared. Meanwhile, KTM's joint venture with China's CF Moto grew increasingly tense as CF Moto positioned itself independently, subtly prepared to capitalize on KTM's vulnerability. Internally, these strategic partner departures compounded KTM's financial strain, leaving Perilous Mobility to shoulder massive operating burdens entirely alone. This isolated stance proved unsustainable. With no immediate allies, the company stood exposed to aggressive takeover bids from opportunistic international players. Will China or India swallow KTM? Now in court-supervised restructuring, KTM is acutely vulnerable, a valuable target for acquisition by cash-rich, ambitious manufacturers manufacturers from China and India. CF and Moto remain strategically intertwined, making them a likely buyer due to shared platforms and existing operational synergies. An acquisition would allow CF Moto to expand globally, utilizing KTM's prestigious brand. Meanwhile, Bajaj Auto and Hero Motocorp remain keen observers. For Hero, purchasing KTM represents an immediate upgrade in performance motorcycle credibility. Bajaj, having once departed, could reclaim a prestigious brand it once helped build. Should no suitable buyer emerge, KTM faces liquidation. Its iconic racing heritage, groundbreaking designs, and manufacturing prowess disassembled and auctioned to the highest bidders. Such an outcome would tragically signal the end of KTM's legendary era, highlighting the severe consequences of strategic missteps, misplaced overconfidence, and devastating partner departures. The pressing question remains: what ultimately awaits KTM? The shift from lifestyle to utility. For more than a century, motorcycles sold an idea: freedom, rebellion, identity. Riders did not just buy machines, they bought myths. They wanted to be the outlaw, the explorer, the lone wolf on the open road. But somewhere along the way, the road changed. Today's riders are not chasing the myth. They are chasing practicality, reliability, versatility. In a world of rising gas prices, congested cities, and remote work, motorcycles are evolving from lifestyle accessories to utilitarian tools. Urban riders are no longer looking to cross deserts or thunder down highways. They want bikes that can handle tight traffic, steep gas costs, and short daily commutes. Ride modes, safety features, range, connectivity. These are the new priorities. Brands that continue to sell nostalgia, live free or die, and chrome-fueled fantasies are losing ground to manufacturers focused on function. The demand for purpose is replacing the dream of personality, and that spells trouble for every legacy brand still selling nostalgia. The new rider playbook. What riders want has changed, but who those riders are has changed even more. The new generation coming up, riders in their 20s and 30s, grew up with smartphones, streaming, and customization. They do not care about your brand's World War history or your father's bike club. They care about value, about options, about whether your bike adapts to their life, not the other way around. This new rider is not buying to belong to a tribe. They are buying to solve a problem. They want a bike that can do multiple things: commute, explore, and maybe just look cool on social media. They want modular design, electric compatibility, digital dashboards, and app integration. They do not care about chrome. They care about torquey curves, weight distribution, and whether they can plug their phone in. And more than anything else, they want affordability. Loyalty is gone. These riders are not brand bound. They are brand fluid. They compare, they research, they post reviews, and if your bike is overpriced or under-delivers, they move on without a second thought. They do not need a brand to believe in. They need a bike that listens. The most valuable company now is not the one with the most history. It is the one with the most humility. So who's adjusting fast enough to win them over? The brands that are pivoting. Some motorcycle manufacturers have read the signs, and they are not wasting time. Honda is quietly rewriting the rules with a low-cost electric vehicle roadmap that prioritizes simplicity, global affordability, and fast charging for urban environments. These bikes may not excite collectors, but they will dominate the everyday market if gas prices keep climbing. BMW, once known only for luxury touring, is pivoting toward precision. Their data-first approach includes adaptive suspension, collision warnings, intelligent route management, and even helmet integration. It is a bet on the future of tech-enabled riding, and it is one they are not alone in making. In the East, CF Moto continues to surge, blending aggressive pricing with respectable performance and expanding into Western markets with confidence. Then there are the disruptors, Zero Motorcycles, building fully electric platforms with urban-first design. Super 73 fusing lifestyle and light mobility into something that blurs the line between bike and motorcycle, and selling out inventory while doing it. These are not just competitors, they are shapeshifters. They are betting on agility, not legacy, on speed, not ceremony. They are not trying to protect a throne, they are building new roads entirely. But what if the next era does not belong to any of them? What if the era of big brands ends? For over 100 years, motorcycling has been ruled by giants, global brands with empires built on assembly lines and loyal fan bases. But what if the next chapter is not about giants at all? What if it is about fragments, micro brands, niche electric startups, direct-to-consumer models? styles? What if the motorcycle market, like music, fashion, and media, is breaking apart into smaller, sharper identities that do not need to conquer the world? Just own a corner of it? Imagine a future where there is no king of the road, just dozens of specialized platforms, each serving a different type of rider. Urban commuters, electric adventurers, modular tinkerers, bikes that cost less than smartphones, or bikes that never need gas, riders who swap brands every 2 years or build their own from kits, platforms where form follows function, not folklore. In that future, Harley Davidson's past means nothing. Indian's logo drama is irrelevant. KTM's collapse is just a footnote. Because riders are no longer looking for a brand to shape them, they are shaping the ride themselves. In my opinion, the future will not be written by tradition, it will be written by transformation. But what do you think? Let's know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you there.